Okie
Good.
dokie. I think we're good. So, good evening, everyone. Good morning for those who are further away, and good night for those who are on the other side. Welcome to this e-commerce webinar. I'm really happy to have Christopher Koo on tonight. We've known each other for a long time now, and we've been working together on some projects. So I think it will be very useful to have him on board. And the idea is to understand a bit, get some insights from his knowledge, and also get to know about him a bit more. So first thing, and I know you really like that question, is can you share a fun fact about you that is shareable, obviously, just to get to know a bit about yourself before we get started?
I'll give you a yes, I can. I hate the question because, what's fun? Anyway, it was my birthday yesterday. What are my favorite things in life? I like planes. I like orchids. I like cheese plants. That's my favorite plant.
Okay, very nice.
There we go. How's that for an
Was
intro?
that funny? Okay,
No, it
we'll see
wasn't.
that. But it's a good try. Nice one, nice one. I won't push you on that.
I'll
So
try hard. So.
let's get to business now. So tell us a bit about who you are. It seems that your family names sounds a bit like your company name. So is there a link there? Can you give us something about that?
Yeah, we're a family business. When I say we, I mean my dad started it. He's been doing software for now maybe 15, 20 years. I went to uni, graduated, went into sales within the pharmaceutical industry, then left that, and then started working for Dad. Obviously, I call him Dad, but everyone else calls him Stephen. But essentially, we're a software company. We work with small companies, we work with large ones, and we just have a lot of fun kind of doing either tailor-made or specific situations that normal companies wouldn't really be able to get involved with. And we have a great laugh, we have a really good time, and we do some great work and work with some great clients.
Yeah, I can test that. So I've had a few comments about happy birthday. So happy birthday, Chris. Let's get into. We're talking about automation. There are different types of automation. What is your automation about?
Yeah, so it's to frame today. If you were to look at your Amazon account and say like, "Hey, I want to automate things," you could be talking about maybe your content creation. You could be talking about your listings. You could be talking about reporting. You could be talking about anything to do with that. Today, if you don't mind me saying, Jerome, we're really going to focus on like the operational side of the business. So there's a lot of agencies and companies out there, people like Jerome and other people that do really great jobs helping you with all the content stuff. I kind of think of that as the front. Then there's all the stuff that happens in paperwork and administration and logistics and operations. And this for me is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about automation. Often this can be a really big challenge for businesses, either because they've got multiple warehouses or they've just kind of grown quite organically. And so that's what I want to be focusing on today, and looking at how businesses can get a good overview of what they currently do, where they want to get to, and then which bits you can automate and which bits at the moment you can't, and what we can look at in the future.
And is that for both for vendors, so people selling to Amazon, or to sellers, the ones selling on marketplace?
Yeah, so we're talking both about seller and vendor. Today, I specifically want to focus on Amazon vendor, just because it's the channel that tends to have more paperwork. There are often fewer tools available for vendors, but it often is the scheme which attracts bigger clients. So it's like, the bigger brands have a bigger problem because they're dealing with an older structure. Whereas someone who comes in, they've got a seller account, it's £1 million a year, they're doing fine. You get, some tool that just runs things for you. You don't have to worry about it too much. Whereas you get a big multi-million-pound company, they're a vendor, and it's a complete pain in the neck. So we can talk about both, but I think for me, my expertise is more around Amazon vendor.
Okay, so when we talk about automation, obviously you're talking about how to optimize or make your operation more efficient. So there's probably a first element is to understand how much time people are spending on handling the operation part of Vendor Central, I believe.
Yeah, it's usually the first question, or one of the first questions I'll ask people. It will go like, are you a vendor? How are you finding it? And within those two questions, someone will say either, well, it's okay, or maybe I'll say it's a complete well, to use nice words, it's a real challenge. Maybe Monday morning, Wednesday morning, there's just like administration completely backed up with paperwork, downloading orders, allocating stock, trying to make things work, lining it up, creating pick lists, sending off to the warehouse. And then when the warehouse is done packing it, they then have to take it back and say, hey, here's how we packed it. And then some poor souls are in administration keying in what went into which box to get the label to send back to the warehouse for them to send the actual shipment off.
And if you had a survey to make, how many times do you get the thing as, oh, it's awful versus it's going good when you're talking to vendors?
It depends what size they are. Like if someone says to you, oh, it's fine, and they say, oh, it only takes 20 minutes every day, either they've got a system in place to do that for them, or they just aren't doing the volume that other people are doing. I would wager that anyone who's doing serious volume on vendor either has a system in place or is having a complete nightmare over time.
And what for you is volume? How do you, so like a number of orders, or do you have a threshold where you say, okay, under a number of orders, you shouldn't, be looking at automation, and what's your?
It's hard to say, because if you have a high value, low quantity product, then obviously it's different. But usually if someone's doing maybe more than £50,000 a month upwards, it's going to become a substantial problem. So what's that, 600 a year? At $1 million a year, you're definitely looking at your options.
And do you have, or do you look at it at numbers of orders per, or lines of orders per month or whatever, which is a threshold, or is that more difficult to? You talk most in numbers, like in sales?
Yeah, again, difficult. Sorry, the first number I mentioned, the 600,000, that was in pounds per month. Okay. I think you asked units or pounds. But if you're asking in terms of number of units, difficult. Usually also once your catalog size gets quite big, it becomes a challenge too. Like if you're a vendor and you've got like 15 products in your catalog, then firstly, like great job, because you've probably really hit a winner. But secondly, it's not going to be that difficult. But if you've got, even 400, 1,000, some people we deal with, they have 100,000 SKUs in their category range. And just trying to keep tabs on all of that is just, it's very difficult to do it without systems. Well, obviously that was before they were working with us. So I would say order volume multiplied by number of SKUs you've got, you start to get a feel of whether or not someone's going to be, looking at this thing, or whether it's not going to be so relevant to them.
And do you have so I assume people don't have a good idea of how much time they're spending on it. And do you have sort of benchmarks or things you can share about actually how much time they're spending on it?
Yeah, great question. So in answer to your first question, often people are either slightly out of touch or just slightly unaware of how much time things are taking. And it's not because anything is, anyone being deliberately negligent of something, but often Amazon, particularly vendor, grows quite organically. And it just comes about that one day someone turns around and says, hey, Amazon takes a lot of time, doesn't it? And they're like, oh yeah, but that's just the way it is. And it takes 3 hours on a Monday morning and 3 hours on a Wednesday and then 2 hours in the afternoon and various bits of time. And you add it all up and, maybe it's 15, 20 hours a week. And, that's got an overhead cost, obviously. From me personally, I tend to, we mentioned maybe a volume of 50,000, 100,000, whatever. For me, the threshold is more on time. That's a better metric to boil it down to. Usually over about maybe 8 to 10 hours a week in total worth of administration operation is when I would say to someone, maybe it could be financially viable for you to invest in a system which would automate this for you.
And do you have any tips to companies, like if people are listening and they are vendors, and to how much or how they could have a good idea of how much time they're spending on it? Do you have what are the tips to do that efficiently, let's say?
It's to, firstly, I would say have a discussion internally, like get the right people to the table. You probably know all the people already. Maybe it's yourself already, but operations manager, someone who's in the warehouse. Either it's the customer service manager or it's the administration customer service lead or something like that. Someone who usually sits with the paperwork people. Someone in finance, because they tend to do the invoicing. And then usually there's a manager above that, or maybe it's one of the three of them, who can then kind of get everyone together and say, let's have a real discussion about what actually happens. What's the process that Amazon vendor goes through on a Monday morning? Who does what? and how much time does it take? Okay, right, we've got 3 people working for 3 hours on a Monday morning, and then we've got 2 people working on a such time for this many hours. And it sounds a little bit like consultancy and, mapping one up. You don't have to be too, I don't know what the word is, watertight. It doesn't have to be down, 2 hours and 53 minutes. But if you can do a quick on the back of an envelope calculation and say, wow, we're spending a lot of time on this. So that'd be my tip, really. Get the right people together, have the conversation. And often when I am engaging with a company, I'll say to them, I'll talk to the first person. I'll say, look, what's your role? Who else is involved in this process? Because there's never just one person who manages Amazon Vendor. Maybe one person does the content, one person does the marketing, one person does the operations, someone does the administration, someone does the finance, someone manages it, someone pays the bills. It's like you have to have all those people, apart from the content maybe, to have a discussion about automation.
Yeah. So basically you have the discussion. If a vendor is doing, let's say, more than $1 million a year and or spending 18 to 20 hours per week on Amazon Vendor Central, they need to ask themselves, okay, should I look into automate some of the tasks? So once you've figured out, okay, you probably need an automation tool, what are the steps you can automate and how do you go from there?
Yeah, so it's usually about 8 to 10 hours, sorry, not 18 to 20. There are some steps that, sorry to correct you, there are some steps that you can automate, there are others that you can't. So the biggest question I get asked, can I do this, which I have to say no to, is uploading and doing product upload to Vendor Central. So there are lots of things you can do with Vendor. Well, actually, there's not that many things you can do, but there are a few core functions that you can do. But one of the big ones you can't do is content creation and bulk upload of product images. Someone says, hey, we became a vendor. We've got 6,000 items. Can we use a tool to just upload them all? The answer is sadly no. Unless you sell books, because Amazon was built on a book framework, and then you can use their really, really old book uploading formatting. But sadly, you can't do that. But what you can do is anything to do with downloading orders and moving them into your system, or allocating stock and confirming back an order, or making an invoice and sending that to Vendor Central, or making the shipping detail and sending that back to Amazon. All of those steps you can reduce down to just minutes. And if you're not doing that, and they are a particular pain point, then it'd be good to have a conversation about that to look at what you can do. The other step I had in the middle,
go on.
Is once you've mapped it out and you've had the conversation, try and put a number on the cost. If you want to make something move internally, and you need to convince someone, like maybe you are the operations manager and it's a big problem. Like you're convinced, okay, this is a nightmare. I hate this. Every Monday, I go to bed on Sunday thinking, oh, Amazon tomorrow morning, But your manager, he's like, manager, maybe they say, oh, it doesn't matter. It kind of works, right? But you say to them, oh, it takes, 8 hours a week. And they're like, that doesn't mean much. And you say to look, if I times that by how much we pay someone and what our overheads are, that's costing us, I don't know, £1,500 a month or something like that. If you can put them and say, look, change my mind, I will save you £1,000 a month by doing this, then maybe they'll sit up and listen. So that would be my intermediate tip after mapping it. And then
yeah. So basically you're saying, okay, they're spending 8 to 10 hours per week, and they can automate. So I think it's 4 things. Basically, it's confirm orders, confirm quantities, sending information for labels, right? Or shipping information, and then the invoicing part. Is that correct?
Yeah, your first 2 were the same point. There's the other one is downloading the orders. So download the order, upload the order, shipping, and invoice. There are actually 2 more as well to do with routing information and like some kind of price cost inventory update. They're more rare. They tend to be more based in the US. So if you've got people from the States here, then they will be using these functions because they have a different carrier or courier arrangement where they tend to book a carrier. But they're the 4 main ones. Actually, Amazon released their vendor API recently, which has been a really great introduction, and they're going to add a whole more bank of features to that in the future. So there'll be more detailed reports so you can get things to do with top sellers and when you're on the page and the customer bought it, what else was ranked against you and how your content performed and stuff like that. So I'm excited to see what options Amazon adds to their API in terms of automating function compared to the existing EDI, which, to be honest with you, is quite limited, and it could definitely be improved. But there's a lot you can do with this as it is for now. That if you don't have that, even that could be a great start.
And on a side note, I know that there is a community of sort of softwares or companies which are linked to or part of a group, like I don't know if it's an API group or a group of companies working with them. Are you part of are you talking with Amazon regularly for these kind of things, or not really, and more listening?
Sorry, I don't know.
So
Repeat.
I know there are groups of Amazon is talking to some of the, specifically on the seller side, because there's more tools than on the vendor side. Do you have sort of connections with people inside Amazon, or is it still on the vendor side still very closed?
It's quite hush hush what's happening within selling.
Okay.
But in terms of the technical teams at Amazon, they're very responsive. Like if you try to talk about stuff on the design and front end and the cost arrangement, you'll be lucky to get blood out of a stone. If you've got a technical problem like we do, I can email the tech people, and within half an hour they get back and say, do this document.
Yeah, you do have contact inside Amazon, and
Yeah,
which are very responsive on the technical part.
And when we're managing an account for someone and we do the EDI setup, a lot of it is going to be liaising with Amazon, certifying the connections, and just managing the day-to-day. And we take over all of that and just manage all the communications, because they change their protocols every now and then. You just got to figure it all out.
Okay, I have a question here. It's, what is exactly inside the cost and inventory upload?
Nothing too exciting. You either I forget the exact name of the page. There's a page where you can go in and you can set the status of an item to either being always available, temporarily unavailable, or I forget the phrase. It's either excluded or end of line. There's a little drop down on the side. And they recently changed it, I think, actually, so you can select all on the left or select 100 and bulk upload the status. So the file contains that information, along with, in theory, the price of the information. Now, the price of the product. Now, people get really excited when you say this, because you say, oh, wow, you can just push a new price file to Amazon. And, because everyone talks about pricing updates, right? And I'm yet to see how successful this is. I want to try it, and I want to see how much they actually bite. But I suspect if you pushed a whole load of price changes, they would just get thrown out. But the availability ones, they might be more receptive to that. And well, when I say might, I mean they're going to take those ones, no problem.
Yeah. On the vendors, sorry. Yeah, on the vendor side, when we're doing it manually, you can change availabilities. You cannot change price. Well, if you lower prices, you can anytime.
Yeah, they'll take that.
But increasing, most of the time, it will be rejected, or it will take time before you can do anything. So, okay, thank you for that. And so we were talking about the 8 to 10 hours. When people are automating this 4 to 6 tasks, how much time are they saving on their operations?
Typically, the most part of that. I should say as well, like 8 to 10 hours is probably like the lower end of what I see. Usually when I speak to people and they've done an analysis internally, it's 20, 25, 30 hours of total man hours.
It's nearly one person.
Nearly either a whole full-time employee or like a half an FTE's worth of time gets completely chopped out. But it's not just about time saving as well. Like if you think, okay, well, I spent some hours and now I arrived at 8 o'clock on a Monday and then the warehouse started doing things at 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Like it's not just a cost of 4 hours to you. It's the fact that Amazon shipment might then get delivered a whole day later. And maybe that carries ramifications for your payment terms and your shipment delivery windows. And maybe your courier makes a mistake 1 in 10 times. Like it has a knock-on effect on everything down the line. So you don't want to just be thinking, oh, it's 4 hours. It's also got a bigger cost than that when you look at the whole picture.
And do you have some case studies or things where you had customers which were having issues like logistics issues, and they had to pay, for example, fees of things because they misdelivered or problems which have reduced after the automation? Do you have sort of data about how much percentage they are paying less or something like that?
Yeah, the number of chargebacks and quantifying things, there are lots of different metrics you could go off. So I don't want to go into too much detail here because there are like 10 different chargeback types and shipping windows. Obviously, if someone wants to ask me about that, you're very welcome to. But the main things we see are time saved in administration, shipping costs overall get cheaper because you can mix shipments together. So it just becomes much more efficient. And then also the chargeback, specifically to do with, I don't know if you have a different amount in the US, I think it might be 10 cents, but there's a specific one called Cost and Information Compliance. where you get a 5 pence per item that was non-compliant. And we basically see that one get completely eradicated. Now, it sounds like not much. People look at it, oh, maybe it was £300 this month, £800 the next month. But over the course of the year, like, that's a lot of money. And I spoke to a guy the other day. He was spending £40,000 a year on this chargeback, in 5p's worth of items, because he was shifting, tens, hundreds of millions worth of units. And if you could say to someone, hey, put a system in that costs you obviously less than 40 grand and save 40 grand, it's like, why would you not do that? If someone would like some more detailed information on that, I'm happy to have a conversation afterwards about that, because it might be a longer conversation.
Okay. And maybe before we share the freebies and we get into the questions, do you have any a case study or a good example of something where they had really that made a big difference for them?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a nice question that you asked there. We've just published a recent one, actually, with a company. They're an English company based in Leicester. And not this Christmas just gone, but the one before, they came to us and they had to cancel maybe 60-70% of their orders to Amazon because they just couldn't handle them. It was great, but it was terrible. And this time round, they say like 8 o'clock they come in. By 9 o'clock, they've got 1,000 cartons on a pallet ready to go with DPD to Amazon. Like, that's it. It's as simple as that. And they just, I'll happily show you the system, but essentially you just can go click and it will just accept the entire day's orders, make all the pick lists. You get a screen where you can mix shipments together. It's really cool. And it saves so much time in the operations that people they think, why? So the people on the ground turn around and say, like, why were we never doing this before? So you can read it. It's on our website. I'll put a link, or Jerome will have a link, I'm sure.
And how much time difference it was before and after? Like, how much time they were spending and they are now? Do you have that kind of metric?
Like crazy, like 30 hours a week down to about like 3. It's incredible, and that's including like the operations time as well. They've still got to go and pick and pack the boxes, and someone's got to stack them up and shrink wrap them and get the label. But it's just it's well worth it for them. And in the chargebacks alone, their chargebacks are about £1,000 a month. And that's less than we charge.
That's 12. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's less than we charge. So, like, even just on that front, it's been a worthwhile.
Yeah. Okay. And if we were to, so in a summary, basically, if you're doing 1 million a year, or you're spending 8 to 10 hours per week, it makes sense to look at the automation. And you've got 4 main tasks to do with basically with your orderers and confirming orders, confirming quantities, and also with the invoices, and you can reduce that by 10. Basically, that's the time you're spending, right?
Can I put a non-biasing statement in this? Obviously, I'm slightly biased because we run our own software automation tools to help people. There are many others on the market available for you, particularly if you're in the UK or the US. Really good companies. I'm not going to say a bad thing against them. My advice would be try out lots of them. Find the one that fits your company the best. There'll be some that do more basic levels of integration. So let's say you use SAP, NetSuite, Dynamics, or Sage or something like that. And they go to vendor and they'll just take the information and just drop it into Sage for you. And maybe for where you're at, that's like the perfect thing, because the biggest issue is just downloading the orders and re-uploading them again. And that might do a huge work. And that might be a really great step. We're slightly different to that because we add in a whole level of functionality to do with automating all the allocation and stuff as well, and also the shipment combining, and we make it, I was going to say more complicated, but we just give you deeper levels of automation that those kind of systems won't give you. But I do want to say, like, it's not just like the Me Show and us, what we do. There are loads of really great companies out there.
How to be humble when you're the best. That's right. So on that note, I know you've got a few things to share with the audience in terms of goodies. So if you want to give us some snippets of what it looks like.
So I've got 2 things. If you want to download these, I don't know if these would be helpful to you. Like I say, often I have 2 conversations with people. The first one is tell me about what you currently are doing, and the next one is tell me about where you want to get to. And the first one, I find it really helpful to sit down with them and say, okay, literally, like we said, talk me through the process. So most of the stages, I hope you can see my screen now. Most of the stages happen in this order, like Amazon raises purchase orders, someone downloads them, someone copies them into the system, someone allocates the stock, and so on. All of these different stages courier labels made, sent to Amazon, and then finally accounts. And I thought it might be helpful, if you would like this, to just say what day this happens on, how many hours it takes, and who does it. And you can download this and print it off, and or you can make your own one. I don't mind, but it will be a great way of just giving you something to work with in terms of having that conversation internally. And then for the more, I don't know, Excel loving among you, I made the equivalent Excel spreadsheet. Hopefully you can see this one.
Yeah, we do.
Where it's the same stages here, and you have the who it is, but you can have an interactive Gantt chart. So I was really proud of this. Jerome thinks it's, I don't know, not so cool. But essentially, if you type in the times here, like if I type in 10 and then I type in 15, it will highlight this block for me on this side here. And I can change which day it is and it will jump around. So I think it's really fun. I'm a bit of an Excel kind of guy, and I thought this was really cool. And hopefully, if you want to have something visual that helps you see, okay, here's where our time is going, you can see it. And this is available for you to download. And just by way of comparison, this is typically the profile we get with people that we work with. So all of these processes here happen pretty much like within 2 minutes of the day starting, including these two actually as well. And the only bit that takes the time is still the pick and pack procedure. So if this is something that if this is where your problem is, then automation is probably to do with roboticizing your warehouse. If this is where your problem is on these ones, and here as well, and making the label, then you need to be looking at getting something in place to help you, whether it's us or something else. So if you would like these, either put an interested or write your email in the comments and I'll send you a copy, or we'll have it on LinkedIn. You can get in touch with us anyway to do that.
Great. So here we are. We had our fun fact in the end about you being a Gantt chart lover and an Excel geek.
Yeah.
So great. Thank you very much, Chris. I can share my experience with Chris and e-Comas is that I've been looking for a long time for a system helping vendors, our customers, to automate part of what they were doing. And there are loads of tools for sellers, but for vendors, much less. And e-Comas is one of the few which are really working well, and specifically for vendors. So it's a great operation, and they design it specifically for vendors. So that's really interesting. And like Chris said, if you're interested, please do leave your email on the comment tab, and we'll get back to you. I'll open the survey about the webinar so that you have the time whilst we do the Q&A to fill it in about how interesting it is. And now we can open for Q&A. So please do write your questions for Chris to answer. So we already have one, which is what kind of labeling do you use? SSCC.
Yeah, great question, Theodore. Yes, it is. If you're doing the non-EDI method, it's AMZNCC. We switch to a license plate receive compliant format, which is SSCC. I know you know what I'm talking about. I don't know if everyone else on the panel on the webinar.
Maybe you could give us a bit more like SSCC and.
Yeah, I didn't want to jump into too much jargon. Can I write to everyone? I'll write in the chat as well. It just means serialized shipment container code, just so I'm not too much jargon. That's what SSCC stands for. Essentially, the idea is if you're doing a manual method, you have to carton things, you take an item, you put it into the carton, and then Amazon, when they get it there, and they take it out and they scan it, and they do that all the time. And, say you put 100 items in the box, what are the odds of them scanning 98 of them? It's like quite high, or not equal to 100, quite high. SSCC is the format that most automation systems will use, and it allows them just to go bloop, one scan on the outside, and they know everything that's in the box, and then they just file it away. So it tends to reduce your shortage claims, so it's really great. It reduces their inbound time, which is always good, and you just get more continuity between what you think you send and what they think they received. You never want there to be a disparity between the two. So yes, it operates SSCC.
Awesome. Does anyone? So please do send your questions.
I wanted to also, did you want to see a quick bit of the back end? I don't know if I should.
Yeah, you can show us. Yeah, let's have a glimpse.
So if you're interested, the system we have looks a bit like this. Obviously, this would be like an interactive conversation, but you can basically see all of the orders that come in from Amazon vendor. You can see the value, where they're going to, and the stock availability status. And you essentially get a function where you can like go, yep, all of these, I just want you to autofill and complete and allocate all these items. So that's really great. And then we have a whole other section to do with shipping, where you see all the orders here on the left-hand side. And sorry, my screen's a bit small for this, but essentially you build boxes on the right-hand side and you choose which courier it is and how many pallet it's, pallet number 1, this one pallet number 2, and it will build like the virtual boxes for you. And then when you hit send ASN, it will then create all the labels for you, both the courier label and the Amazon label at the same time. So it's like an all-in-one portal for it. As well as having reports on like which items are doing the best, which are doing the worst, which ones you're always out of stock on, what you're missing, where your purchasing could be better, that kind of stuff. So I don't want to spend too long on this because we can have a private, or not private, but it's
interesting. Yeah,
we can have a private conversation. It's better to have a more detailed conversation about it in the context of a specific thing. So.
Okay, and I was one question was in terms of benefits. So the first one, which was simple, was saving money, like on the saving time, and the second was to reduce chargebacks. Is there any other benefits or hidden benefits of using an automation tool, or are these the two main ones?
They're the two main ones. And I always like to stress to people as well, like not every chargeback you have is going to get addressed by putting something like this in. So if you've got chargebacks with preparation, bubble wrapping and stuff like that, an EDI and a vendor is not going to help you with that. Just because they're like two different things. The big one, like I say, that we help with is the carton information compliance. So if you have an issue with that one, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. And the other benefit where we tend to find is often if you're getting, maybe you get 50 purchase orders on a Monday or 60 or 100, you tend to get 5 or 6 maybe to each location. And usually people have to go, okay, here's one PO, and then I have one ASN. One order, one shipment, and it goes in and out. Maybe it's several cartons, but it's going to be one shipment. And what we allow people to do is to mix the orders together so that if they've ordered item A in order 1 and item A in order 2, you can then put them in the same box. So that means that if you've got a giant order and then you've got a small order, you can kind of just mix them together, which makes the smaller orders much, much more cost effective. Normally you think, well, why are we spending all this effort on sending an order that's £80 when I've got one that's worth £3,000 here? Just reject that one. People just reject it. You can accept everything and then you can just mix them together and play mix and match at the delivery stage. So you save time on the admin because that takes about a minute. And then when you want to mix shipments together, it really transforms the way that the shipment outbound procedure happens. Excuse me. I'm just going to mute myself.
Well, yeah, that's the virus, of course. Awesome. That's great information. Do you have like in your area, so you're in the area of tools. So do you have any other sort of automation tools or tools you know of, which are not specifically competitors of yours, but which works, work well, or you often see, or which can be an interesting mix for the audience who's already looking for, how can I improve my efficiency? How does that, do you have any tips on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you open up the definition of automation to be beyond what we started out with, to do with the operations, and move back into like the content and the marketing, there are huge numbers of tools that will tell you about your ranking and the content and stuff like that. Like Helium 10 and Celix and all of that kind of jazz. So I don't know if we need to go over those ones, but just
no. But if in more in the logistics part, or like looking at the operational part, say, okay, I have my process. I've got a lot of chargebacks. It's taking time. So okay, the order processing I can automate with your tool, for example. On the rest, do you know of other tools or other tips you could share for the audience on the operation specifically?
Yeah, I suppose my main advice would always be like, don't let something just be going under the radar, just because it's Amazon, right? Like you put up with this all the time. Amazon, they throw in a chargeback here or a shortage claim there, or they put in a thing about this, or your third party warehouse, they say, oh, we just got a bill of, £800 because we spent some time doing this thing. And once you actually dig into it, you say like, well, why are you charging this money? Like, where is this cost coming from? Don't just accept, I was going to say something rude. Don't just accept, don't just take it for an answer. Sometimes you want to really dig into it and figure out what's going on. Because maybe the third party warehouse is doing something that you don't need them to be doing, and you want to cut down on that. Equally on the chargebacks fronts and the shortage claims, really worth digging into. Maybe it's I tend to find it's a particular like fulfillment center. I don't know if anyone else has problems with BHX3, like in Leicester, but it's the one that always causes all our shortage claims. You can ship 150 parcels or ASNs, and like 60 of them will have been to BHX3, and like 55 of them came back with a shortage claim. Like, why? This unnecessarily high. So it would be, call up your vendor manager or go and see the fulfillment center, talk to them, figure out why they are having such an issue with it.
Can you really go to the fulfillment center yourself to have a chat with them?
I mean, you can't just rock up, obviously, and be like, hey, bust down the door and demand some answers. But like, it's worth having a conversation and saying maybe there's something going wrong. Because if you're doing the same process for everywhere and only one place is going wrong, then clearly you're not the issue, right? Like, because everyone else is fine with it. Maybe it's the way that the pallets get delivered that they just, they cause problems. So it's that kind of granular detail I'd really encourage people to look into, and take every action you can to try and make it work. Even if you have to play some stupid game like conform to their rules at that particular location, just do it. It will save you thousands of pounds each year.
And I was wondering, listening to you, like if you have this kind of situation where you have one warehouse FC which is really causing a problem, does the fact that you have an automation tool for your customer help them to open a case and sort of challenge the system, saying, okay, listen, we've got this tool and we've got an automation in place? Do you have example? Does that help because we know that when you open a case as a vendor, that's my tip anyway, is that you need to give evidence, and you've got a strong case with them. So does that help in building an evidence of what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I never say that because you have this in place, every claim you raise is going to get accepted and they're just going to go, oh, fine, okay. But you can provide a clear chain of, we received the order on this date, we sent your response at this date. When we sent the response, we said it will be delivered on X date. The courier received it on that time. The courier then delivered it on this day. You say it arrived on this day, and then you've charged us because you think it was late on this day. Like, if you don't have that kind of clarity into your process at the minute, you won't have much to stand on when they say, oh, it was this day. How do you know? You have to dig through some paper stack and find the proof of delivery from the courier. You want everything all joined up into the one place. And at the minute, like, well, at least with our system, you get a clear tracking of like, here's the order, here's the journey it went on, and then bang, it was said it was delivered at this day. And then if Amazon raise the case, they say, oh, we think it was delivered here. You've then got something to go back to them with. But like I say, I'm not going to say that because you have all this information, they're going to accept it, because they might still raise some other problem. But it certainly helps produce the documentation that you're going to need to fight your call.
And do your customers do sort of print screens of that, of what the system is showing them to send to the vendor support team, for example?
They wouldn't take the whole, you don't need to know the whole process flow. They typically take the bit at the end where they said, look, here's our, usually the ASN, here's the ASN, we sent it on this time and it contained this information, and here it is. Why are you saying that it didn't arrive? The courier then came back and said, yeah, we delivered on this date.
Okay.
Obviously, because something arrives on time doesn't mean that all of it arrived on time. It's like, Amazon will always wriggle, but if your compliance is always high normally, then you've got more of a reason for them to just waive it individually. But I know that you help people a lot with chargebacks on that kind of stuff as well. So
yeah, well, for us, I mean, on the chargebacks, it's for sure, it's like with anything doing with vendor support or with seller support, to that matter, is that you need to come up with evidence or hard data. Like Amazon is very hard data driven. So if you just say, yeah, honestly, it happened this way, believe me, they will not. So if you have a real robust tracking system, it helps a lot. And also our experience is that if you can explain you have a robust process, they will always listen. So like, because sometimes on the chargebacks, they say, okay, this happened. Tell us what's your plan to improve what, for next time that it doesn't happen. It's a very Amazon thing to say. It's okay. What's your plan to make sure you're not, it's like when with sellers, if you'll get your account suspended or you did something wrong, they'll say, okay, you need to explain what's your plan and your process for that not happening again. And I think having a system and explaining, okay, we have an automation in place that will talk, I think, a lot to Amazon. I know that's very efficient. Do you have any wise words to close that discussion, Mr. Chris?
For a minute, I thought you were going to call me Mr. Koo.
No.
No, well, I suppose firstly, thank you for listening. I also feel exceptionally hot, so I can see that my face is red in the thing. My wise words would be, it's easy to let Amazon just become a beast, and it's really great news, right? You open an account, or maybe you inherited an account that's a few years old. You're now in e-commerce, or you're the operations manager, you're doing something, and suddenly you think, this has taken over my life, or it's worth maybe 20% of our sales, but it's consuming like 80% of our time. And don't be afraid to kind of challenge it and say, well, can we look at what process we could be changing and reforming and looking at doing things a better way. Also, don't be like lulled into a sense that everything can just get sorted like instantly. In the sense that, like I say, there are lots of things that you can't do through automating different things and through EDI and stuff like that. There are lots of things you can't do, which is a shame. But at the end of the day, like, you have to work with what you can do and try and minimize and reduce the problems of the things you can't. So I would say, have the discussion internally. Get the right people to the table. Think about the future. Like, maybe what you're doing works for now, but will it work in 12 months' time? Will it work in 2 years' time? Maybe you're paying £100,000 a year in an advertising agency. That's great. If they deliver on what they say they're going to deliver on, where are your sales going to be? What's that going to mean for your warehouse? Are you going to need to get a new warehouse? What does that mean for the software you have in place and your stock control? It's like they're not as glitzy questions to be asking, because everyone always thinks about ACOS and listing content and translations, and they're really important topics. But if you do all those things, and you do them successfully, you're going to have a problem in the warehouse somewhere. And if it's just bubbling away under the radar, maybe you'll end up spending way more money than you need to as a business. And that's where it's not as glamorous. But when I see the people in operations, their face is like, wow, I could not believe that this could be done so much more easily. Why did we not do this before? So it's a real privilege and a pleasure for me to kind of be, working in the background and sorting these things out. It's a real joy. I like to go and meet people and sort out the warehouse and say, I don't know what's going on. Tell me what you're finding and tell me what you'd like it to be like, and really working with them. Most other companies, they're huge, big corporate things, you'll get some throwaway stuff. We're a family business, right? So we kind of work alongside you to figure out how we can support you. So sorry, that's getting back to me. The tips would be, think about where you are, think about where you want to go, figure out how much it's costing you, look at your options, try all the options, and then figure out this is our plan. Here's how we want to go ahead to align with all the other growth that we have in mind here.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And I think that, it makes sense. Everything about Amazon is to be able to scale. And one of the issues we have when we do consulting for strategic buys, helping companies to be ready for that growth. Sometimes it's growth can be an issue, like for the cash flow, for the operation, for the system. So looking at Amazon is looking at scalability, and automation is, of course, one thing which is a key success factor for your scalability of your business. So thank you very much, Chris. I think no question left unanswered. So anybody want anything, you can type in the comments and we'll get back to you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening and see you soon. Bye-bye.